weekly public training session. Thank you all for joining us today. Today is Thursday, May 19th, 2016. On our agenda for today, we're going to give a tour of our new tool on our website, the version 3 EMS Agency Service Area Builder. I've got Clay Mann, the NEMSIS TAC PI, and Joshua Legler, who developed the Service Area Builder, on the call with me today. So first, Clay was going to talk a little bit about the tool, and then Josh is going to lead today's training and demonstration. If you have any questions, please feel free to jump in with those or put them into the chat box, and we're going to do our best to answer them. Before I turn the time over to Clay, though, a couple of housekeeping items. Please remember to mute your lines when you are not speaking so that we can avoid feedback and unnecessary noise issues. If we do have problems with that, I can go in and mute everyone's lines, but it's much easier to take your questions if I don't have to go that route. Once again, thank you all for joining us today, and here's Clay.
Thank you, Laurel. You're much more articulate than I am, so I appreciate that introduction. NHTSA is incredibly pleased to finance this effort in developing this tool. It has a couple of great purposes. First of all, as EMS agencies across the country move to version 3 and they're filling out the information that describes their EMS agency within their local software, there are a number of elements that request data that will be difficult for them to obtain, and that includes in your service area, what are the counties you serve, the zip codes you serve, the census tracts you serve. That's the primary purpose for this tool. Is it allows you to map out your area on a geographic map, and the product provides you back information that allows you to fill out those elements. It will provide you with your census tracts, your zip codes, etc. We plan to have an exciting addition to this come on in the next few months that may help EMS agencies as they attempt to administer or describe or characterize their service areas. That is, we hope to be able to add additional information from, for example, the U.S. Census Tract, that when you've mapped out your service area, you'll be able to identify, for example, what is the proportion of the population you serve that are over 65 years of age? What is the average income level in the service area in which you work? Important information that administrators of EMS agencies may need as they attempt to characterize the populations that they serve to those who either fund their organizations or for other purposes. So I think it'll be a great tool moving forward, and it looks like we have a fair number of local agencies on the call today, so that's great news. And hopefully this will be a tool that will be very helpful for those purposes in the future. So that's just a quick overview of the product. I'm pleased to turn the time over to Josh Legler. He is a consultant that we have worked with and is clearly the primary developer of this tool. And so, Josh, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you for being on the call today.
Okay, thanks, Clay. I think I took presenter role and then I gave it away again. Oh, no, I do have it. Give me just a second here. Okay, and can everyone hear me and see what's on my screen?
Yeah, this is Clay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for that introduction, Clay. For the benefit of everyone, my name is Josh Legler. I work on contract with the NEMSIS Technical Assistance Center. So I'm not NEMSIS staff, but have been assigned to work on this particular project and have the pleasure of introducing it to you today. At the end of the webinar, I'll direct you to the NEMSIS staff for any follow-up questions that you may have after this webinar. So let's look at the purpose of the EMS Agency Service Area Builder. This is a page from the NEMSIS Data Dictionary. And if you're familiar with the data dictionary, it has two main areas. It has agency demographic data, and it has EMS patient care report data. This is a section or a snapshot from the agency demographic data. Agency demographic data is information that describes your EMS agency. It's information that you fill out once when you set up your EPCR product, and then you only change it occasionally as things change within your agency. As you're filling out your demographic data, you get to this section called your EMS agency service area. And I've highlighted 4 data elements there. All of these are national data elements, which means that the information that you record for these 4 elements is submitted to your state, and it is also submitted from your state to the national EMS database if your state is submitting data to the national database. And these 4 data elements describe which states your agency covers, which counties, which census tracts, and which zip codes. Now, I think most of you, if I were to ask what states you cover, you would be able to answer that question very, very easily, right off the top of your head. And the same probably goes for counties. You know what counties you cover. You may know the zip codes that you cover. That might not be too hard. But most of us, when it comes to census tracts, most of us probably couldn't even say what census tract we live in. We know our zip code, but we don't know our census tract number. And so that's the hardest one to figure out. What census tracts does your agency cover? And yet, if you're able to figure out the answer to that question, then it unlocks the potential to understand all kinds of things about your agency and the population that you serve. As Clay mentioned at the beginning of the call, all of a sudden you can do things like ask, what percentage of our population is over age 65 or under age 18, or all these different questions that you can ask because the Census Bureau has collected that information. So these are the 4 data elements that the service area builder is meant to help you figure out. And what we've seen is that in most EPCR software, when you get to this section of your agency demographics, your software, the software gives you lists, and you're supposed to pick from the list. So you get a list of census tracts, and you're supposed to pick out the ones that your agency serves. It's a lot easier to view this on a map and just draw your agency service area and then have it tell you which census tracts you covered with that area that you drew. And so that's the purpose of the EMS Agency Service Area Builder. All right, so for the rest of the demonstration this morning, I'll be on the NEMSIS website using the Service Area Builder. To get to the Service Area Builder, go to nemsis.org and then go to the Reporting Tools menu and then Reports and then EMS Agency Reports. I'm going to let my cursor hover there for a second so everyone can look at where that is located. Again, that's Reporting Tools, Reports, EMS Agency Reports. This brings up this page where, of course, there's information about today's webinar that's going on right now. And we have a link to log in to the EMS Agency Service Area Builder. There's no actual login. It just brings up the Service Area Builder on your computer. So this is the Agency Service Area Builder. And you can see it's map-based. When I first bring it up, it kind of hones in on wherever I'm located. I'm in the Portland, Oregon area, so you're seeing a chunk of Northwest Oregon and the coast out here because it knows where I am. And so once this has come up, then we've got a couple ways that we can identify our EMS agency service area. And the first one I'm going to demonstrate is the draw feature. This will build my service area by drawing an outline. And I'm going to come over to kind of a semi-rural area over here, just south of the Willamette River, the town of Canby and the town of Aurora. Let's say that my agency covers up to the Willamette River. And then through some of these rural areas here. And we also come across I-5 and then back to the starting point. So as I've drawn this area, I just clicked on each spot on the map. So just place your cursor there and click. Once I click back to the original spot, then it will finish drawing that outline. And it will now identify all of the census tracts and zip codes, and of course county and state covered by my service area. What you'll notice immediately is that this shape that now shows up on the map is not exactly what I drew. So the purpose of the builder is not to describe the exact outline of your agency service area. Instead, the purpose is to identify which census tracts and zip codes your agency covers. So even though I drew an outline that only went down here by Needy and then up and across over to Donald, because it covers part of this census tract, that census tract gets highlighted as being one of the census tracts that my agency covers. Okay, so it's important to remember that distinction. We're not trying to draw an exact outline. We're trying to identify which census tracts our agency covers. So that's the draw feature, and I could go ahead and draw additional outlines to add to it. Let's say I also want to cover the town of Molalla. I can go ahead and do that as well, and it will add to my area. Now it added some very large census tracts that start heading up into the Cascade Mountain. Okay, so that's the draw feature. Let's go to the next one, and then I'll stop for a moment for questions. I'm going to hit the clear button, and that will clear my service area, so I can just start over. The next feature is the select feature. I can highlight the select button, and now I click on one spot on the map, and it gives me a menu. So I clicked over the town of Wilsonville, and it allows me to add either a specific census tract, number 244. I could add all of Clackamas County. I can add the town of Wilsonville, all of the state of Oregon, or I could add the zip code that I clicked on, which is 97070. I'm going to go ahead and choose Wilsonville. So now it has identified all of the census tracts that overlap Wilsonville. Wilsonville crosses the Willamette River and comes down here a little bit, so that's why this census tract was included as one of the census tracts covered by my service area. However, I can tweak it from here. If I click on an area that's already selected, then I get a remove menu, and I can choose to specifically remove that census tract or anything else. So I'll remove that census tract. Let's say my agency does not cross over the river. And so now I've just got these census tracts left up here. Okay, so as I've been either drawing or selecting to create my service area, it has been keeping a running list over here on the left-hand side. And so you can see that my service area covers Oregon. It covers 2 counties within the state of Oregon, Clackamas and Washington County. It covers these 5 zip codes, and it covers, census tracts, and then it covers these 3 zip codes. So if you live in Wilsonville, you may know that these are the zip codes in Wilsonville. It's highly unlikely that you know that these are the census tracts that cover the town of Wilsonville. And so that's the great piece of information that this tool gives you that you can then take back to your EPCR system, and you can enter in those census tracts as being in your service area. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second here and see if there are any questions. You can either just speak or type something into the chat. We'll just wait a second, see if anyone has questions about using either the draw or the select feature to get your list of census tracts and zip codes that are served by your EMS agency.
Josh, can you draw 2 non-contiguous areas?
Yes.
Or do you have to do each one of those separately?
Yeah, you could either draw or select. Well, you would do them separately, but they would all add up. So let's say that, for some strange reason, I also serve an area way over here. I can add that area as well. So now I've got these 2 areas that I cover. I can also go back to drawing and say, draw an outline, and then that will be added as well. That one happened to be contiguous on the census tracts, I guess. But yeah, I can just keep adding to it like that.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Those are the two main features, draw and select. And that's really what we expect most people to use. And you can see that just within a matter of maybe 5 minutes, you'll have the information you need for your agency service area, be able to enter that into your EPCR system, and then you're good to go unless your area changes. You know, your town annexes a new region or something in the future. I'm going to go ahead and clear the map again and show you a couple of additional features that may be useful in identifying your service area. The first one is paste. If I hit paste, I get a box and I can type in or paste a list of things that I want to use to describe my service area. So I can paste in a list of zip codes, or I can just type them in. You can just put each one on a new line, or you can even just separate them with a space, or whatever you want to do. It's going to find those two zip codes, and then click paste. So it has identified based on those two zip codes that these are all of the census tracts that are covered by those two zip codes. Using paste, I can also paste a list of census tract codes if I happen to know them, and then I'll know, based on that, I'll find out all the counties and zip codes. I could paste a list of county codes or state codes. Now, all of these have to be codes. So from the NEMSIS data dictionary, a state code is a 2-digit numeric code. It's not a postal delivery code. So for example, the state of Oregon has a state code of 41, which you saw over on the left-hand side. The last one is I could paste a GIS shape. It needs to be in a format that's referred to as well-known text, and we've provided a link to a Wikipedia page that describes the well-known text format. This would be useful if you have maybe a county or city a GIS department that has mapped out your service area, and they say, oh yeah, we can give you the GIS shape of your service area. It's going to be this really long string of numbers, and it won't make much sense, but you could just copy and paste it into this box, and then it will draw that service area on the map. Okay, so that's the paste feature. Any questions about using that feature? Okay. We had a question come in through the chat. Let me take a sec to read that. Any plans to extend this to an API call that vendors can use to get the information for a point on the map? Yes. This is powered on the back end by a web service developed by the NEMSIS IT staff. That service is live and in production. The only thing we're waiting for is they need to write the documentation for it. Once they've written the documentation, we can get that out, and vendors can start using that API. Okay, I'm going to clear the service area again and describe the import feature. Import is helpful if you already have a NEMSIS demographic dataset file. So, you know, in your EPCR system, you may have information entered in already, and you could export that agency demographic information if your system has that feature to export your demographics just to a file on your computer. It's a NEMSIS XML file that you get. Then you could load that file into the service area builder, and you could then make some tweaks and adjustments, and then save, you know, your new service area. So I've selected a demographic dataset file that I have here, and when I click import on that, it reads the information that was in that agency demographic dataset file and figures out the service area. In this case, it's an area by Coeur d'Alene, or covering Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and a little bit into the near Spokane, Washington. So that's how it'll import from an existing NEMSIS demographic dataset file. I think that'll be a more rare use, but the feature is there if needed. All right, so I've got all this information, and I know that I can click to expand or shrink each of these lists over on the left-hand side. It might be a little tedious to kind of see those on the screen. So we've provided the print feature so that you can get this all on paper or into a PDF, and then you can take it over to your EPCR system and enter it in. So if I click print, here in Google Chrome, which I'm using, I'm seeing a preview of what the printout will look like. So it shows the state of Idaho with all of the counties, census tracts, and zip codes covered by my service area, and then the state of Washington with all of those counties, census tracts, and zip codes. On the second page, it does show me a map highlighting my service area. So then I could send this to the printer, and using this information here, I could enter that into my EPCR software. It's also just fine to, if your EPCR software has a way for you to just copy and paste the data, then you can just simply highlight this with your cursor and copy, and then paste it into your software. Whatever works for you, this tool should support it. Okay, so that was printing. And I also want to pause for a second here. We don't know what everyone's EPCR software looks like exactly. We don't know exactly what kind of interface they provide for you to enter your service area information. So I want to see if anyone has any questions about how to get from having this list in the builder to actually getting that into your EPCR software in your demographics setup. Any questions about that? No questions, okay. All right, the last feature that I'll show you, go ahead and shrink these states down, is download. I can click download and push the button, and this is going to give me a fragment of XML data in an XML file. So again, this is going to be for a more technical user. I click download, I get that XML file. Give me a second, I'll open it up on my computer here. This is not a complete XML file. It's modeled after the NEMSIS demographics file, but it only contains this section for the EMS agency service area. But you can see here that it's listing out all of those census tracts that we had seen, all of those zip codes that we had seen, just in an XML format. So a more technical person could go ahead and grab this data. They could copy it. They could then paste it into an existing agency demographic file, or move it around in various ways, or process it. It's also a possibility that vendors of EPCR systems could build tools that would consume this particular XML file and load up your demographic service area data. Now, I say possible, which means no one's done it yet, to my knowledge. So don't expect that feature today in your EPCR system, but the possibility exists based on having access to that XML data. All right, I want to wrap up the presentation by pointing out where you can get further help. There's a user guide link that'll bring up a PDF of the user guide. You can read through that to get all the details, and it also goes through step by step how to build your service area, how each tool works, and so on. There's also a link to a tutorial. That video is a 5-minute tutorial video posted on YouTube. Very similar to what I covered today, just compressed down into 5 minutes. And so that's a great resource as well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this presentation. As you can see, the service area builders really, our big goal was to make this as quick as possible for you to get in, just take 5 minutes and figure out your service area. And so we have a question from Jay. He said, any information on the accuracy of the zip code highlight or background you could provide? Yes, there's some detail in the user guide about the zip codes. down here in the questions. And the short answer is that we are using the zip code tabulation area data from the U.S. Census Bureau, otherwise known as ZICTAs. And those are a general geographic representation of Postal Service zip code delivery areas. So they may not exactly match where the Postal Service would deliver mail, but they're meant to be a close approximation. And Jay also asked, I assume these can overlap. There are no ZICTAs that overlap each other. So every ZICTA is independent. However, there are overlaps between census tracts and zip codes. So for example, one zip code or ZICTA may cover portions of multiple census tracts. One census tract may cover portions of multiple zip codes. So state, county, and census tract are exact hierarchies. Every census tract is entirely within a county, and every county is entirely within a state. But zip codes are not that way. They may overlap multiple census tracts, multiple counties, and even multiple states in some cases. So if Gene asked, what if you have a service area that is a partial census tract or zip code? Then the service area builder identifies that census tract and that zip code as being covered by your agency. Now, if you wanted to go get some stats on, how many people live in my agency service area, that's obviously going to impact the stats because you only cover part of that census tract. So you don't cover everyone that's in the census tract. But the core purpose of this tool at this point is to just identify that you do cover either all or part of that particular census tract or that particular zip code. Okay, and another question from Jay, suggestion or guidance for solving where zip codes are significantly overlapping. Yeah, I'd say you tweak as you go. So let me take an example here, see if this will help. I'm going to head down here between Oregon and Idaho. And we'll see if I can get a good example here. The Snake River, there's kind of an island on the Snake River. You might not be able to see it real clearly, but Idaho is to the east of the east side of that island. So the island itself is in the state of Oregon. And I'm going to go ahead and just let's select this zip code. That's an Oregon zip code, 97914. Oh, that's a big zip code. Okay, you'll see that even though I selected that zip code of that was in Oregon, you'll see that that zip code covers a little bit into Payette County, Idaho, and it does cover this one census tract that's in Idaho. So at this point, if I'm working on this and I'm like, no, I know that I never cross into Idaho. So even though I cover that zip code, it's an Oregon zip code. The zip code itself goes a little bit into Idaho, but I never go into Idaho. Then I could remove this Idaho census tract from my service area, or I could remove Payette County, and that would remove all census tracts within Payette County from my service area. So I'll go ahead and click the X on that census tract to get rid of it. And so you'll see that that one went away, and also the state of Idaho went away. So now I'm just describing the state of Oregon. So to summarize, that's how I would deal with solving where there's overlaps. Just make those minor adjustments and tweaks after you've got the basic area covered. I'll give a second, see if anyone has other questions. You can either type them into the chat or just speak.
Josh J. Osby again. I was just going to query your question. I've got zip codes that are just running multiple counties, multiple locations where I know that there's not zip codes, and that being able to filter that really answered the question. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there a thought about correcting that, or is I'm trying to come up with a plan for some of the users too that are going to punch some stuff in?
Yeah, right. When we were designing it, we went through that decision process of, what do we do in this case, like I showed you, where that island, as you look at it, it's kind of a funky setup here. It's partially, the zip code covers a little bit into Idaho, a little bit into Oregon, that kind of thing. So the approach that I showed you is what we decided on, was that if the zip code goes even a little bit into the other state or the other county or whatever it might be, if the overlap is more than just a tiny fraction of like, I think 0.1% or something, then it goes ahead and selects it. And then from there, you make those tweaks to take out the ones that you don't serve.
Yeah, just as a tidbit, I got one zip code that's covering like 10 cities and 10 different zip code locations. I thought that.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I was wondering if I was doing something wrong, but that makes sense.
Oh, okay. What zip code was it?
82009.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a zip code that covers a very large area. And, what can happen is, for example, the zip code itself might be covering the north side of Cheyenne, and it might cover, for example, up to Chugwater, or maybe even short of Chugwater. Because it does go into that next census tract, that census tract gets highlighted. And so, yeah, that's a good example where the EMS agency person who's using this tool may need to make some adjustments. They say, yeah, we serve that zip code, but we really don't go, we don't go all the way up here into Slater. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that census tract that I know we don't serve that census tract. On the other hand, they may say, well, I know we serve all of Cheyenne, so I'm going to go ahead and select the rest of Cheyenne and add that to the list.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Okay, great. Clay, I think I'll pass it back to you for any comments you'd like to make.
All right, thank you, Josh. I appreciate that presentation. I think that was really, really thorough. And just to reiterate a point that Josh made, there is a tutorial available. So if you wanted to pass that tutorial around to those who are interested in this but weren't able to make the call, it does a great job of describing the overall service area builder. And I think that this recording of today's presentation will also be available. I am just going to thank everyone for being on the call today and staying with us as we demonstrated this. Again, if you have further questions about this or any questions in regards to the NEMSIS standard that the Technical Assistance Center may be able to help with, feel free to contact us. And Josh or someone is showing our website. If you wanted to contact us, get that contact info. Just press the contact info button, and you'll be able to contact any of our staff, and we'd make sure your question gets answered. So thank you very much for being on the call today, and we look forward to having you on future calls as we talk about some of the other products that we're developing here. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.